I just don't see why in the world Houston would do this. Remember, also, Ben Simmons is somewhat injury prone. Okay, so, but I'll play along. Let's say it could happen. If I'm Philadelphia, without question, I absolutely give up Ben Simmons, Mike Scott, Zaire Smith, whatever it has to be to get James Harden. James Harden is one of the best scorers we've ever seen. Obviously a first ballot Hall of Famer, still in his prime. He spreads the floor, spaces the floor. That would give Joel Embiid more room to operate inside. It would balance out the team. And here's what people forget about James Harden. Without Mike D'Antoni, Harden has a really well-rounded offensive game. He is not just a shooter. He is a playmaker. He can pass. I think under Doc Rivers, his offense would be more balanced. He wouldn't score quite as much, and I think he'd get Tobias Harris and Joel Embiid involved. So I love it. If they had a big three of James Harden, Joel Embiid, and Tobias Harris, I think they go from being behind Brooklyn, Milwaukee, and Boston, and maybe even Toronto and Miami, to being right there on paper with Brooklyn as the best team in the East. So if I could do it, if I'm Philly, I'm jumping at it.
So almost everything Broussard said is correct. If this were to happen, they become, I'll take a step further, they're the favorites in the East. So let's circle back. Why would Houston do this? I can think of two legitimate reasons. One is Houston knows their window right now is closed. And so getting the younger player in Ben Simmons, getting a guy whose game still can grow more in Ben Simmons might be attractive to him. The other reason they might do this, if I may say, is because their owner has some, let's call it, liquidity problems. And if they were able to construct a trade where you get off some bad contracts as well, like Eric Gordon's contract, where you are able to all of a sudden trim some of that future payroll, which I know Tillman Fertitta is not excited to pay for a non-contender, then maybe it's possible. Whilst what I think is most likely is that this doesn't happen, that Simmons and Embiid play at least 1 year together with Morey surrounding them with pieces and with Doc coaching them, and they have a massive upgrade in the front office and a pretty big upgrade at head coach. But if it were to happen, I think you'd look at the Sixers as potentially the second best team in the entire NBA.
Yeah, I agree. Sham said it was a non-starter, but like Broussard, I'll play along. And the fact that the story came out that Morey was interested in Harden was not really news. It's not news that, like, you know, you're interested in Rihanna. The news is if Rihanna's interested in you. And that's the only way that this could actually happen is if Harden goes up and says, hey, you know what? I want out. I'm 31 years old, and I'm tired of just being a middling team in the West. And like you laid it out, Broussard, like I can go to the East and really make a move. Because think, I know everyone thinks like the Rockets were a 4 seed, but they were sort of a 4 seed in sheep's clothing or more wolf's clothing, whatever animal you want to use. Because they had 44 wins, same as the Thunder, same as the Jazz, and the Mavericks had 43 wins. So next year, you're probably going to have a resurgent Wolves team up, and you're definitely going to have the Warriors in there. So if I told you, Brandon, I'll put you on the spot here, what's more likely? The Rockets miss the playoffs or win the championship? Which way would you go?
Miss the playoffs.
Yeah.
So look,
I mean, that's what
you took the words.
Agreed.
Kevin, you took the words out of my mouth. Sometimes we approach this too much from the angle of the organization, general manager, guys who are making a decision. LeBron James shifted the culture in sports years ago when he went from the Cleveland Cavaliers to the Miami Heat. We all remember the story. When he did that, he showed every single player, including myself, that you can control your own destiny. So if I am James Harden, I am looking at this situation in Houston like, look, look, I may love this city. I appreciate the guys in this locker room. I appreciate the people in this organization. But it's about winning a championship right now. Because every day we sit up here on these shows and we talk about, well, he's a great scorer. He's an all-time great scorer, but he can't win. Well, does he want that to be his legacy? I don't think he does. In the NBA right now, these top players are thinking about who can I match up with and go win a championship. So when you look at this and you look at that roster, Nick, you say, well, they're missing three-point shooting and they're missing a dog leader. Yeah. I can provide that and could potentially win. So if I'm Philly, I will make that swap between Harden and Simmons, Nick.
So, well, and I want to also answer Wild's question, because the Rockets can't win the championship next year, but they also can't miss the playoffs. One of the reasons I defend James Harden is he's the only guy in the league who's made the playoffs every single year since he went to Houston. The Rockets were the only team in the entire league to make the playoffs every single year Harden was in Houston. But I do think the point that you and Brandon bring up, which is it is so hard to find the exact impetus for the Rockets to do this unless, Jenna, James Harden makes them. And what we have seen over the last decade in the NBA is the people that actually run these teams are the superstar players. Right. And now if Harden were to demand out, would he demand to go to Philly specifically? He doesn't quite have the leverage that like Anthony Davis did, because his contract's not expiring. Someone could trade for him and he's not going to retire. And so it would be it would be hard to really force his way, but he certainly could make things uncomfortable in Houston, which, Jenna, to be fair to James Harden, we have no inclination that he wants to do. We have no information that he wants to do that. But if he did, it would be possible.
Well, Broussard, let me ask you this. We talk so much about, if Harden went out, would the Sixers give up Ben Simmons? What would you do if you were the Sixers and the Rockets asked for, say, Joel Embiid in exchange for Harden? Now, do you make that trade?
Look, I like Harden better as a player than Embiid, but as far as the fit, I mean, Harden and Ben Simmons, Harden likes to have the ball in his hands. Could you run a pick and roll with Simmons rolling to the basket and play Simmons on the block? Yeah, I mean, you could, but I would be a bit more hesitant to give up Embiid than I would Simmons. So I would consider it. I'd really have to talk with my coaching staff and see if they think those two could work together, Simmons and Harden. But I'd much.
I think it'd be super fascinating, and I think we lost Broussard for a moment. I think it'd be super fascinating to see a James Harden with Ben Simmons playing the 5. Yes. That if they traded Joel Embiid and said, hey, Ben, go play the center. Go play center and let's see what this team looks like. I do think that'd be fascinating. But Wilds, to be fair, I want to be clear here because people know I have a relationship with Daryl. I give you my word, I have not spoken to Daryl about this. This is just my opinion, pure opinion, uninformed. I think Daryl far prefers the upside of Embiid than the upside of Simmons. I think Embiid is in a tick above Simmons. Go ahead, Wilds.
See, I don't know why, and I think we talked about this earlier in the show of like, they both want the ball in their hands. Like, okay, but if we look at usage rate last year, it was Luka, Giannis, Harden, Trae Young, and then Westbrook. Westbrook also needs the ball in his hand. And you could say that experiment didn't work, but we saw points when that was really working. So if you can upgrade Russ for Ben, and now you've got, I'm going to say he's faster. I'm going to say he's obviously better on defense, and he can attack the rim. And guess what? He doesn't shoot threes. Like, it's actually addition by subtraction to be like, I'm not going to shoot threes. Maybe he's going to learn to shoot threes. Maybe Daryl's going to sprinkle, three dust on him. He's going to start bombing threes, but I don't think so. The question I have for you, Brandon, is this. Daryl loves to make moves. He made like 70-something trades in his tenure with the Rockets, like second most in the league. Do you think this organization, especially with this sort of leadership that's kind of spread out a little bit, and Daryl didn't really take the reins of the leadership. Like, we got Doc, we got Elton Brand, we got a few people. Do you think these early rumors will start to get into the players' heads, specifically Ben and Embiid, are like, I don't know. Now the boat is kind of rocking a little bit too much?
100%. When you have a new leader come in, new regime come in, then you know things change, right? You gotta imagine that after this horrible season and how they were ousted in the bubble, Elton Brand sat down with his guys and said, look, guys, here's the plan. If Elton Brand is a great leader, then he had these conversations with those guys in the locker room. But now you bring in Morey, who's above Elton Brand, so now everybody is probably walking on eggshells like, okay, what is this guy going to do? He's known, his MO is known, Nick, for trading people. He's super aggressive.
Yep.
He will overcompensate to try to get the job done. So if I'm at Simmons or Embiid, I'm thinking, well, what is he going to do with me? And obviously from yesterday, you see him FaceTime, and so the relationship's off to a hot start with Embiid and Morey.
Just quickly, Jenna, here's my prediction. Game 1 of this season, whether it's December 22nd or whether it's MLK Day, in the starting lineup for the Philadelphia 76ers is Joel Embiid, Ben Simmons, and Tobias Harris. And by game 20 of the season, the Sixers are the best three-point shooting team they've been in a decade, and they're a top 3 defensive team. I think Doc will harp on the defense. I think Darryl will find the surrounding pieces. And without making major changes, Jenna, I think Philly will be far better than they were last year. Now, can that win a championship? I don't know. But I think Darryl's going to fill in the blanks a lot for the roster and see how it looks with Doc coaching it.
I like that. Get on the shooter.